Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everybody, Mike Beer here with some stakes action Sunday afternoon at the Big A Aqueduct. A couple of turf stakes on the card. We're going to take a look at the first of those, race number 6. Is the Memories of Silver Stakes. It's 4 3-year-old fillies. They're going to go a mile and a 16th on the outer turf course. Full gate of 10 3-year-old fillies entered for this race. Let's take a look at this field right now. As usual, Chad Brown, very, very well represented in this field with 3 fillies in the race. All 3 of them expected to take a little bit of money. The morning line favorite is one of Chad's horses, number 5, Eminent Victor. Just been keeping, really good company so far this year as a 3-year-old has Eminent Victor. All graded stakes races for her so far this year since she's returned from the layoff. And listen, she's run pretty well in all of those starts. I shouldn't say all graded stakes races because off the layoff in June, they ran her in the Wild Applause Stakes, going the flat mile at Belmont, and she won that day. She's hasn't won in her 3 starts since then, but she's just been keeping top company. Her figures have held up. She's run very well in each of those last 3 starts. Just happened to not have won any of them. She's the morning line favorite. She's probably the horse to beat. Her 2 stablemates in this race, however, they're both, a little bit less exposed than Eminent Victor is. They both have something to recommend them in here. The number 3 is Salama. She's 9-2 on the morning line, coming off of a really nice win right here over this turf course in her most recent start. Veronica Green is the number 8. She's 6-1 on the line, very lightly raced. Feels like there's a lot of upside with that filly. So Chad, as usual, has them surrounded here. Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector for this race before we move on. Not a ton of speed signed on in this race. Timeform US believes that the number 9 in this race, a horse who is going to be a pretty big long shot, Tazweya, can make the early lead in here. I won't argue with that. Tazweya is a horse who's going to need to up her game if she's going to be competitive here, even if she makes a clear early lead in this spot. I personally have always been a little bit of a fan of Tazweya's. I think it's fair to say she hasn't, really panned out. But her first 2 turf starts this year, off of a little bit of a layoff, she ran fine in both of those races. Her most recent start at Laurel wasn't quite as good an effort. She didn't make the lead that day. I do think she'll make the lead on Sunday. We'll see how much of a difference it makes. Again, I'm a fan of hers. I think there's some talent there somewhere. Just not sure that she's good enough to beat a field like this one. Veronica Green, one of Chad's horses, is projected to be up close, as is the number 1, Hail 2, who is a horse who I do feel like Hell 2 has a little bit of something to recommend her in here. You kind of wanted to see her already sort of break through with a bigger performance this year as a 3-year-old. It hasn't quite happened yet. I did think she ran really well when she won 2 starts back, however. Wide trip at Saratoga, going a mile and 3/16, but she carried all the ground that day, was widest at the top of the stretch, stayed on gamely, got the job done there. They ran her on the Sands Point last time, put her on the lead, going 9 furlongs. Did not work out. She was not good in that race. Wound up fading back to 7th, well behind Eminent Victor and some others. We'll see if she can rebound. I'm a fan. I didn't really want to bet her back in this race. Spirit and Glory is the 2. A nice stakes win for this filly. 2 starts back. They took her to Colonial for the Virginia Oaks. Wide trip that day. But came with a nice run through the stretch, closed that field down, ran really well there, as did the 3rd place finisher, Candy Light, who's also back in this race. Spirit and Glory, one of the horses who tried the Sands Point last time. Couldn't really find the excuse for her in that race. She ran, I think, her typical race that day. The trip, for the most part, that trip worked out. She's a horse who doesn't have a lot of speed. They rated her to the back of the pack. She got to save a ton of ground, and I thought she had plenty of room through the stretch there to make an impact, and she just wasn't quite good enough. Outfinished for 3rd and 4th in the late stages of that race. Ran well. Will have to run better, I think, to win this race. Salama is the 3. Major player in this race for Chad Brown. Salama, career debut at Tampa way back in January. Only got a 60 by a really impressive win, though. Big sweeping move around the turn in that race into a slow pace and just buried that field. Really nice performance off the layoff at Saratoga. She missed a lot of time after the debut win. Off the layoff at Saratoga, did not get a good trip in that race. It's one that I think you want to be a little forgiving for. Here's her most recent start here at Aqueduct back on September 30th. Good trip in this race. Rated in mid-pack, saving all the ground. You can see her through the stretch. That's her favored stablemate, who's to her outside in this race in the clear rallying. Salamat's going to rally up the rail here. They're going to hook up late in this race, and it's going to be Salama with the better finish, taking over, getting clear at the end. 87 by a really nice performance. A lot of upside with this filly. I think she's a dangerous horse in this race. Candy Light, the 4. One of the, I guess I want to say she's an outsider, but maybe she's not. She's only 6-1 on the morning line. But one of the horses, outside of the main contenders, maybe you want to say, who I think has a shot in this race. We'll see. I thought she ran fine in the Virginia Oaks 2 starts back when not quite as good as Spirit and Glory, but a good third that day, staying on to the end. Cut her back to the 1-turn mile last time, or the 2-turn mile at Keeneland last time. Good trip in that race. Just got to stay on the inside the entire way, but came with a really good finish. Anybody who hasn't seen the replay, you can go back and watch the stretch run there. Rosario got her clear in the stretch, and she did come with a good finish to close that race down and to win it going away. I thought that was a step in the right direction. She's still very lightly raced. Only 5 turf starts in her career so far. Feels like she's getting better for a really good trainer. We'll see what kind of price she is. Eminent Victor's the 5. Probably the horse to beat. Morning line favorite. Getting a little, got a little bit of class relief last time, I should say. It was still a grade 2, the Sands Point, but that race wasn't as tough as the Lake Placid that she had run in prior. The Lake Placid, she had no chance in. That race was run at a very slow pace, and this filly was trying to rally from last. It just wasn't going to happen. She ran fine last time, but another horse coming out of that Sands Point where I don't necessarily feel like she had some big excuse in there. The trip, for the most part, was pretty clean. She rallied gamely, was never a real threat to the 1-2 finishers, did get up for third at the end, but she ran fine. Didn't necessarily want a short price on her here. She's a Mia's a New York bred. I'll give her credit for getting over the hump in her 2 most recent starts. They're both over this turf course, by the way. And finally winning some races, because her prior 4 starts, she had settled for second in all 4 of them. A trip or 2 here or there, particularly in the race 3 starts back at Saratoga, where she just never really came clear of traffic. It's hard to say how much closer she was going to be, but she was compromised that day. Has gotten the job done in her last 2. She's a horse I'd like to sort of take back and make one run. We'll see if she can, get the right kind of trip in here and then take a step forward, which she has to do. Trevor McCarthy retains the mount. He's 2 for 2 with this filly. He rides her very, very well. My Risky Affair is the 7, also trained by Christophe Clement. Feels like one of the horses in here who's, sort of finding her way, to improvement through some racing. There's nothing wrong with any of her turf starts. She's been on the board in every single one of them. And her most recent start is, most certainly the best race of her career. We'll take a look at the replay of that right now. This is back at the end of October. Now winner 1 allowance, going 1 mile and 3:16. She just had all the best of it here. Cleared right to the lead at the start as the even money favorite. And just made all the pace in this race. They tried to challenge her around the second turn. She just picked right up, did not let them get up to her flank in that race, and then you see through the stretch. I really like the way that she kicked away with something left there. Finished the race off pretty well. 89 by her speed figure. It's a good performance. She has to drop back in distance for this. She has not been shorter than 1 mile and an 1/8 in any of her turf races, but she seems like a tactical kind of horse. I don't think the shorter distance is going to work against her here, and I wonder if she isn't a pretty dangerous horse in her. I couldn't ultimately talk myself into her, but I don't think she's impossible in here. Veronica Green's the 8, 6-1 morning line, the 3rd of the Chad Brown runners. I just think this filly's pretty good and probably better than she looks on paper. They started her out on dirt. She ran well in both of those first 2 starts on dirt. She didn't win either time, but I thought ran a lot better than it looks in both of those races. Chad switched her to turf. She has plenty of pedigree to handle the surface switch, and when they made the switch at Saratoga, she ran really well. She didn't win that day, but boy, was that a pretty tough beat. She came with a good finish in that race. The horse that out-finished her down towards the inside, Jane Mast, is a progressive filly in her own right. Her most recent start for Veronica Green. Here it is right now. We'll look at the replay. Just an easy win. The Beyer didn't improve at all, but you can't win a turf race much easier than this. They just took a hold of her from the start. Irad did, settled off the pace, swept up on this field 3 wide around the turn, wins very easily, staying strongly to the end. I don't care about the figures at all. I think this filly fits really well in this race and has forward to go. I think in some ways she may be the most interesting of the Chad horses, but her stablemates are obviously both very good. Tazwea, we talked about, she should be on the lead in here. I'm a fan, just don't want to bet her in this race. Parnack just hasn't really panned out so far for West Point. She did finally get her first stateside win in her most recent race. That was on October 29th, just a couple of weeks ago here. 2 starts back, she was in the Salama race. I don't want to say she got a terrible trip in that race, but maybe the best way to put it, she just didn't have a fair trip in that race. They took her way back at the start, rated her, and just never really got her involved in the race. By the time they came to the top of the stretch, she basically had no chance in there. I don't know. I didn't really know what to think about it. They came back in her most recent start, and she ran better with a better trip, got the job done. It's still not the kind of race that made me want to bet her back in here, but maybe she's trending in the right direction for really, really good connection. She has the outside post to overcome. The 11 and the 12 both entered main track only for this Memories of Silver. It's a pretty good race. I think it's wide open. I think a lot of different horses can win here, and obviously Chad Brown, as you come to expect in these races, has a little bit of a stranglehold on the field. Of his three, and I do think all three of them are going to run well in here. I personally wanted Veronica Green. I made her my top pick. I went 8, 3, 5, and 4 in the Memories of Silver. Veronica Green to me is just going to be the better price, and I don't think she's overmatched by her stablemates in here. I'm going to take a shot that she can up her game just enough to pull off what would be maybe a mild upset here in the Memories of Silver. Good race, though, on Sunday at Aqueduct. It goes as race 6 with an approximate post time of 2:44 Eastern time. The Memories of Silver for 3-year-old fillies. Good luck.